Yesterday, we watched The Kid Who Stole $230 million. And I said that that's like the biggest lick ever. And then this morning on my YouTube homepage was he stole $3.4 billion. So I was wrong. It wasn't even close to the biggest lick ever. So we're going to watch it and we're going to see what this guy did wrong as well.
It's in a bathroom closet. This Cheetos.
Run it back.
On a crisp November morning in 2021, IRS criminal investigators surrounded this $1 million lake house nestled in the quaint town of Gainesville, Georgia. During the raid, they find carefully submerged under blankets in a bathroom closet this Cheetos popcorn tin. Inside, a single-board computer
Cheetos popcorn
containing
is gas.
$3.4 billion in Bitcoin. Jimmy Zhong had acquired the coins a decade prior, but the person he took them from had thanked him, even sent more coins as a reward. There was no cause for justice, so why were they raiding his house all this time later? After years of living the high life, mostly spending his millions trying to impress women, Jimmy had made one single mistake, leading Uncle Sam directly to his fortune. This is the story of Jimmy Zhong and how he should have got away. Jimmy was never the cool kid in school. As an Asian, growing up in Cobb County, Georgia throughout the 90s, he was a little out of place. Kids bullied and brutalized him, quote, for being fat, ugly, and weird. He said the worst experience happened when he was pantsed in front of everybody at a football game. He felt humiliated, didn't even feel like a person, and worse, his parents weren't there for him either. Two first-generation immigrants from China, they were trying to make ends meet in a foreign land. His mom got a job as an overnight nurse, and according to Jimmy, she was never awake. His father never found a job. He'd pick up anything cheap and try to resell it for $1, and when he wasn't doing that, he would huddle away in the basement. Then, come middle school, his parents got divorced and cemented this dysfunction. For a young kid struggling, not having a supportive family didn't help. Jimmy craved social acceptance. He had no friends. But in the midst of this turmoil, there was one place where Jimmy always felt safe. Alone upstairs in his room, the computer with its endless possibilities provided an escape. So Jimmy would boot that old thing up every single day, and by middle school he had taught himself a slew of programming languages. To quote Jimmy, the computer allowed me to fantasize about making up the perfect life or something. And well, little did Jimmy know back then, but soon this digital escape would make him one of the world's richest people for basically no work. You know, it was easiest for Jimmy in class to be the quiet smart kid. Whenever his peers would tease or taunt him, he could just bury his nose in a book or a math problem to ignore them. Top of that, he was just damn smart. So in 2008, he graduated from Central Gwinnett School with a near perfect SAT score, earning himself the prestigious Hope Scholarship. He was going to the University of Georgia to study computer science, and he thought this would finally impress his parents, but they didn't even care. So at 18 years old, he packed up his bags and moved an hour away, never to speak with them again. Once on campus, it was a new beginning. Jimmy said this is when, quote, life really started. And there's one thing you should know about Jimmy. He loves alcohol, but he had a problem. He didn't have a lot of money. That didn't matter though, because during his first year, shortly after Christmas break, early 2009, an opportunity presented itself. While browsing a programming forum, he saw a post about a new form of digital currency called Bitcoin. And Jimmy, with his knack for programming and keen sense for innovation, was one of the earliest adopters. Started mining coins on his laptop, would earn a couple hundred a day. But at the time, Bitcoins were beyond worthless. Some guy had managed to sell 5,000 of them for $5, but that wouldn't even pay for a case of beer. So Jimmy turned off his miner and forgot about them. Till 2011, because whoa, all of a sudden they're worth $30 a coin, and of course Jimmy hears about that, and wow, where did he store all those Bitcoins he mined 2 years ago? He can't find them, he lost them, has no idea where he saved them on that laptop. Cue the start of a desperate attempt to earn some more. Now 21 years old, he creates an account on Bitcoin Talk. His username referencing a Mercedes-Benz 300 SD, a car he always dreamed of having, thought it might impress the ladies. Curiously, Jim's first post was about mixing Bitcoin. See, it turns out since every Bitcoin transaction is public information on the blockchain, it's not as anonymous as originally thought, and mixing is a technique of tumbling Bitcoin around many transactions to make the digital trail harder to follow for any would-be sleuths, and for some reason Jimmy was conscious of this. This post is important, but we'll come back to it because For now, he was making a little money. Set up what sounded like a fairly sophisticated mining operation for the time, and well, Jimmy was a degenerate. He got into gambling. He was a huge fan of this website called Bitcoin Ponzi, but it closed down. And Jim being a talented programmer at this point, 3 years into a 6-year computer
Made his
science
own
degree,
website.
decided to start his own version of the game. Between
Figured.
this website, which took a fee from users playing on it, and him getting back into mining, he likely made a significant amount of coins. But better yet, he managed to recover many of the coins he mined in 2009, though apparently 5,000 of them to this day remain lost forever due to a hard drive failure.
Ooh.
Maybe if someone talented in data recovery gets their hands on that thing, they'll have themselves a little windfall. Nevertheless, Bitcoins were worth about $5 at this time, and it seems he had more disposable income than he ever did before. So what's he do? He uses it to party. According to Jimmy, he started drinking every weekend, had numerous blackouts, and also liked to do a little... In fact,
Crazy
this was the
work,
start of
Jimmy.
Jimmy getting into that booger sugar every weekend for a 6-year
Crazy
period.
work.
And that's partly because his drug habit was about to make him $1 billion in a way that he never expected. While Jimmy was busy living out his rockstar fantasies on the weekend, a new website hosted on the darknet was growing in popularity. The infamous Silk Road.
They're all listed in the light of day. It's unbelievable.
Any drug you wanted, you could get, and you had to pay with Bitcoin. Being terminally online,
untraceable.
Jim hears about the Silk Road's reputation and begins using the site for personal amounts. Remember his earlier post about mixing? Maybe he wanted to better hide what he was doing here. However, after only a couple of transactions, according to Jimmy, he decided to withdraw all his remaining Bitcoins from the site. I guess his local stuff was better. And in the process, he accidentally double-clicked the withdrawal button. To his surprise, both withdrawals go through. He just got double the coins. Jimmy had
Glitch in
just
the Matrix?
accidentally stumbled upon a massive coding flaw that no one knew about for over a year. This is a race condition attack, and Jimmy's got fast fingers.
Hold up.
Wanted to stretch them.
There's no way back in the day when things were loading slowest ever that somebody didn't press the withdrawal button multiple times. There's no way. He said in a year. So this was up for a year or something like that. That's my understanding at least. And he's the first. He's the first to make it known. There's definitely somebody out here who did it, and maybe they did it one time and they're like, wow, that was crazy, but he's not the first. There's no shot.
Out. See just how many withdrawals he could make, so he got to work. On September 19th,
Auto clicker, buddy.
2012, 22 years old, he creates a new account on the Silk Road called the Tormentor, deposited 500 Bitcoins, then spammed that mouse button, makes 5 withdrawals in the same second, resulting in a net gain of 2,000 coins.
He does it
Later
again.
that day, he does it again, makes himself another 1,000 coins. 3,000 coins in total, then worth $30,000. Jimmy's over the moon. That's tuition. But this wasn't an infinite money glitch. I mean, the Bitcoins were coming from somewhere. See, Silk Road implemented a tumbling service that was meant to keep their users anonymous when making payments. Whenever you made a deposit of Bitcoins onto the site, it was combined with a bunch of other user deposits, then mixed
Just
around
like
a
banks.
little bit. This was meant to make it harder for any law enforcement to follow the money back to any one individual. Nevertheless, Jimmy wanted to know exactly how many Bitcoins he could get from Silk Road, so he turned into the exact sort of Bitcoin sleuth Silk Road's system was attempting to prevent in the first place. And amazingly, he posted about it on Bitcoin Talk. Someone had made a thread about, at the time, the largest Bitcoin address in existence, holding just shy of 500,000 coins, at the time worth about $5 million, and they want to know who owned the damn thing. Now, a lot of people were speculating Silk Road, but Jimmy knew. Check it out. He writes, I've been studying the mixer lately. It does absolutely nothing to hide the fact that you're using Silk Road. Links his findings on a blockchain explorer and says it looks like they're moving about 50,000 Bitcoins in and out every day or two. Jimmy knew if he sat watching the blockchain, as soon as they put those coins in the withdrawal pool, he could take them all. He made this post on the 21st, and by the 24th, using a total of 9 accounts, making over 140 transactions, Jimmy did exactly that. At the time, these coins were worth $620,000.
That's a come up.
But this wouldn't go unnoticed. The Silk Road made money off commissions of sales. In total, it made 614,000 coins, but Jimmy had just snagged 1/12 of that. So just a few days after taking them, the owner,
That's a
Drug
large
Pirate
amount.
Roberts, sends him a message on one of the accounts. But it's not what you might think. He didn't demand or try to threaten Jimmy into sending the coins back. He simply asked how the exploit was done, and when Jimmy told him, apparently, Pirate even sent more coins as a thank you. So Jim Jam, 22, with a drinking, gambling, and drug problem, now had nearly $1 million. So he blows it, right? Jimmy puts 40,000 coins into one wallet and 10,000 into another, then does absolutely nothing with them. It's hard to imagine what was going through his head at this time, but he's showing a lot of responsibility. That said, poor socially repressed Jimmy had to brag about this money a little bit, right? So in November 2012, 2 months after
Why would he brag?
He creates a new account on Bitcoin Talk using the handle Loaded. And not only would this be his outlet to show off, but also perhaps his first mistake. On his profile, he writes Bitcoin multimillionaire, broker, and asset manager as a signed message using his 40,000 coin address. The signed message is proof he owned the funds. And all he does is shitpost LARPing as some big-time Bitcoin asset manager. Check this out. In one post, he writes that he has a large new client incoming, and he's now managing 200,000 coins in total. In another, he's bragging that he's responsible for
this could be smart
crashes
though
in the market because he's selling so much of his client funds. And even saying more ridiculous stuff like he flies to China by private planes with cash so he can buy Bitcoin for a cheaper price and over-the-table transactions for his clients. I mean, come on. This guy says he had them put a normal toilet in a 5-star Chinese hotel so he's not pooping into the floor ones that are so common over there because, quote, last time he made a mess. It's like Jimmy was either starting a fake wealth manager arc to solicit more funds and start a Ponzi scheme, or
That's what I was thinking.
A troll. I think he got some sort of gratification out of this lying. He liked to play the big shot, wanted people to see him as successful. He'd never admit publicly to the true origins of the coins, but this wasn't an attempt to cover that up either. The smart thing to do would have been to remain quiet altogether. And by late 2013, that was becoming more true than ever. Late October 2013, Silk Road is taken down by the FBI. They seized 170,000 Bitcoin from Silk Road's founder, Ross Ulbricht. A far cry from the 614,000 they knew he profited, and they wanted the rest. Ross is on record saying the vast majority of these proceeds were reinvested back into the marketplace, but there's always been suspicions about the true whereabouts of the coin. Worse, during the bust, the feds got a copy of Silk Road's database, which recorded all user activity. Deposits, withdrawals, you name it. Within that database was clear evidence of Jimmy's scheme, and if they knew to look at it, well, they could easily trace the blockchain to see the wallets where Jimmy now kept his stash. And if he sent any to an exchange to sell for USD, well, they could subpoena the exchange and get Jimmy's identity. All of a sudden, the stolen funds were a whole lot hotter, and Jimmy was going to have to be very smart with what he did with them to avoid being caught. Come 2014, Jimmy graduates with his bachelor degree. Out of college and Bitcoin going for just over $500 per coin, he's now worth $30 million and will never have to work again if he plays his cards right. So bored, he starts warming up to the high life. Gets that Mercedes-Benz he always dreamed of and buys a modest home in Athens, Georgia.
That's also fine.
Car parked in the driveway. Georgia Bulldogs signage on the house, which was his university sports team, and he was a big fan of them. But most of all, Jimmy wanted to use his money to impress. He's taking trips to Miami, paying for all his friends to come, and even giving them free Bitcoins as gifts. Besides a brief stint installing alarm systems during the summer of 2009, he never worked. This was entirely funded by liquidating Bitcoins. As Bitcoins went up in price, he even lamented on Bitcoin Talk that he shouldn't have bought his house in full. Cost him over 1,000 coins at the time, and now would have only been around 300. He even regretted how many he sold at $5 for beer money. This didn't stop him from drinking though. As the years went on and Jimmy fell deeper into his life of
this is always going to happen though.
His post on Bitcoin.
This always happens like with stocks and anything that appreciates or depreciates, because you can't exactly 100% predict whether it's going to go up or down. So a lot of people, they see it hits a peak and they just want to play it safe and take their win. And honestly, I don't think he did anything wrong. Like $5 was crazy. That was crazy. And then now it's in a higher point. It's just how it happens.
Bitcoin Talk slowed down, often only returning to post that he was drunk or doing something a little harder. Sometimes he would even make these drunk posts on Loadit and then go talk to himself on his Mercedes-Benz account. It was all very strange, but check out this post. This guy is joking that the price of Bitcoin dropped recently because Loadit was arrested. He jokes back, "If I ever get that sloppy, lock me up and throw the keys away." If only the person who posted this knew the truth of how close they were. And I'm not talking about the time in 2016 when Jimmy got arrested in Eddie's Calzones after an off-duty cop witnessed him dip a small spoon on a keychain into a bag of white powder. True story, by the way. He got a year of probation and the charges were later expunged. I mean, like, you think selling Bitcoin to buy a house in cash might have raised some red flags with the IRS.
Right.
But no, Jimmy always paid his tax on sold coins. He indeed wasn't getting sloppy.
I was gonna say,
all
like,
this was funded entirely by his legally obtained coins. 5 years on since the hack-in, he hadn't touched any of it. Kind of amazing. Jimmy had held 50,000 coins through every major bear and bull market. He had watched as one day they were worth tens of millions of dollars, only to drop and lose millions the next. Through it all, he never sold. He had just post pictures of balls and say the only thing that kept him through watching these crazy highs and lows is drugs. This was all about to change though, because come 2017, Jimmy would make a post on Loadit that would make him famous on Bitcoin Talk and get him a little more attention than he bargained for. Bitcoin gained a ton of popularity throughout 2016, ending the year just shy of $1,000, but this was causing problems. Bitcoin's protocol can only process a handful of transactions per second, and already they were slowing down considerably under the mounting usage. If Bitcoin was to ever go mainstream, it would need to handle thousands of transactions every second with cheap fees. By 2017, the Bitcoin community was deeply divided over how to address this scalability problem. This led to the idea of Bitcoin Cash, which would be capable of facilitating more transactions, but despite having Bitcoin in the name, it would be an entirely new coin. To try and ease the transition, for every Bitcoin someone already owned, they would get the equivalent amount in Bitcoin Cash. Jimmy was now going to not only have his 50,000 Bitcoin, but also now another 50,000 in this new currency. The thing is, not everyone believed it would be a success. There was two distinct camps. Those who continued to support Bitcoin and believed this new, essentially altcoin would never gain traction. And then there was those who believed Bitcoin was destined to fail because of its scalability problems and Bitcoin Cash would be its natural successor. Jimmy was the former. So on March 21st,
I don't know like exactly how crypto and stuff like that works, but the Bitcoin is a virtual currency, right? So how can it only take in so many transactions? I mean, I'm completely blind here. I have no clue how like this stuff works, but Bitcoin Cash would be another crypto or physical, like it's called cash, but I'm assuming it would be another crypto. So why can they not like change I don't know how any of this works, but like they couldn't change the coding or something of the Bitcoin to make it be able to handle more transactions? That's just weird. I don't understand how that works.
1st, 2017, 5 months before Bitcoin Cash was set to release, Jimmy made his most notable post on Loadit. He tags Roger Ver. This guy's an early adopter and investor into many Bitcoin companies and now a big supporter of the move to Bitcoin Cash. And Jim Jam basically told Roger to put his money where his mouth was. Proposed a 1-to-1 trade, Roger's Bitcoin for his Bitcoin Cash. At the time, this is a $60 million speculative deal being proposed. People are captivated by it, and Jimmy is kind of a hero. This is the Bitcoin forum after all. There's not a lot of supporters of Cash on here. People are really roasting Roger, saying he needs to agree to this trade, otherwise it's calling his bluff. Would mean he doesn't actually believe in Bitcoin Cash. The news of this trade even makes it to Reddit. Nobody thought he would accept. To everyone's surprise, he seems to, but he wants 48 hours before arranging the deal. 2 days later, Jimmy makes a comment on the thread saying he has yet to see a contract, but this was the last post he would ever make. Roger, over the next few months, would go on to make numerous posts saying that he's tried to contact Loadit but received radio silence back. And so the deal never happened. Jimmy had disappeared. He even stopped posting on his Mercedes-Benz account. Now look, maybe Roger's confidence just scared Jimmy into backing down. He thought, oh wow, maybe Bitcoin Cash will actually be a success and I shouldn't go through with this deal. Or maybe it's because somebody on Reddit traced his coins back to Silk Road. Check it out. It turns out after taking the coins from Silk Road, Jimmy had run them through a mixer. The problem with trying to tumble such a huge amount of coins is that no one on a mixing service is doing that at the same time, and so it becomes trivial to follow the trail. You can just watch where the huge lump of coins get bounced around from, and you know they all belong to the same user. Worse, in this case, the final destination, that 40,000 Bitcoin address, Jimmy had signed on his Loadit profile. They knew that these coins belonged to him, and they very clearly traced back to the Silk Road. And what a shame for Jimmy that this deal never happened, because 2 months later, August 1st, 2017, the hard fork of Bitcoin Cash happens, and it's not nearly as successful as Bitcoin. Despite Bitcoin's challenges, it goes on its biggest bull run yet, peaking at $20,000 a coin, while Bitcoin Cash was worth around $3,500 at that time. By not taking this deal with Roger, Jimmy had now made a $973 million mistake. In fact, Jimmy, just days after the fork occurred, deposited his Bitcoin Cash into an overseas exchange, selling them for money and then buying an additional 3,500 Bitcoin. These coins were only worth an extra 68 million at the peak in 2017.
Wait.
Far cry from
Why would he sell them to buy more Bitcoin instead of just trading them for the Bitcoin? I'm confused. Like, if he was going to do that, like, that was so stupid. That was so dumb.
the additional billion he could have had. But I mean, Jimmy now had 53,500 coins to his name, which at the current prices were worth well over $1 billion anyways, so what's another billion? Best of all, Jimmy felt comfortable spending those 3,500 coins he essentially got for free, and so he embarks on a $16 million spree. If anyone tells you crime doesn't pay, I just want you to remember this big smile on Jimmy's face. He's 28 and more than anything wanted to buy social acceptance. Guy got himself multiple Lamborghinis, a boat, a few jet skis, a motorcycle.
Just like
spent
Malone.
hundreds of thousands chartering yachts
From
private
yesterday's
jets,
video.
hosting friends at 5-star hotels, going to nightclubs, sporting events, you name it, and everything.
This guy also giving out Birkin bags?
He's even giving out Bitcoins again. This time 5 USBs loaded with 50 coins, each one worth about $1 million. It was
He's giving out
lucrative
molten Birkins.
Jimmy's friend. At one point, this mad lad even got $700,000 in cash to, quote, have a case full of money like in the movies. He hoped this would impress a woman into having sexual relations with him. He'd later say that this
So
plan
cheap.
did not work. In fact, he had never slept
Just
with
like
anyone
Malone with
except
the Lambo.
one time when he paid for it. Poor fella. This was all to the astonishment of Clayton Kemker. Not the sex stuff, the money, you perverts. Clayton was interested in developing some real estate, had become good friends with Jimmy, and together in 2019 they teamed up to create a company. Jimmy was to fund the project, putting $9.5 million down and pledged $32 million more to secure a $60 million loan. In case you're wondering, Clayton thought that Jimmy was just some sort of like computer genius, got in real early on Bitcoin, which is true, he did get in really early, but it's not exactly the full story. Anyways, all of this showboating was again getting him a little more attention than he bargained for. So that briefcase full of cash Jimmy had, turns out someone had them.
50 Bitcoin right now is worth almost 5 mil. That is, bro, that is crazy. Yeah. Yo, buddy, that's ridiculous.
Their eye on it. Late March 2019, still living in his modest Rue Street home, Jimmy reports to the police that his place was broken into while he was out of town. Told them he came home and found his rear bedroom window shattered. The thief had taken that briefcase, and Jimmy had spent almost half of it, so it contained about $400,000 in cash and a thumb drive with personal information. Yeah, there was probably $1 million in Bitcoin on that, but he didn't tell police that. Said to the officer that he felt the person who stole all of this probably knew him because he had hidden the briefcase behind an air vent. Yeah. Police Lieutenant Sean Barrett said the cash was never recovered, nor was the suspect identified, but because of the amount of money reported stolen, it, quote, raised flags with the IRS. Jimmy.
Obviously.
Cue Trevor McAllen. a criminal investigator at the IRS focusing on cybercrime, digital assets, and decentralized finance. This guy's entire job is linking cryptocurrency with its quasi-anonymous properties to the people spending it. These guys are basically FBI agents, and you don't want to be investigated by them. The thing is, these guys work in secrecy, sometimes for years, slowly building evidence to ensure a strong conviction.
That's how it always is.
Jimmy is none the wiser.
Like, it's a pretty common known thing that if the FBI comes knocking, you're already cooked. They already have enough case evidence built against you. So by the time they get to you, you're done, buddy. It's over.
That everything he is doing is now being scrutinized. But also, the IRS has no idea that Jimmy was involved in the Silk Road heist. They're simply looking into the origin of his funds to see if they're gotten from ill-gotten gains because it's such a strange occurrence. And they're probably not really looking too hard. And Jimmy's been extremely careful with never linking his Silk Road funds to his real identity, right? It probably didn't help. Almost immediately after the robbery, no longer feeling safe in his house, he purchased $1 million lakeside home about an hour away in Gainesville. But that was just a bonus now if the IRS could bust him with something. The first thing they do is request from Jimmy's internet service provider a history of web activity and IP addresses assigned to him. They find from August 1st, 2016 until at least April 1st, 2021, he was assigned this one. This is like your online phone number. Everyone has a unique one, and when you do anything online, like visit a website, they see it, can trace you back to it. Whereas his ISP log showed his internet history. He had been visiting an undisclosed crypto exchange to liquidate Bitcoin. So the IRS sends Jimmy's IP to the exchange, and they get back all of the details. Turns out he registered an account in March 2017, and likewise that exchange gave up full records of everything Jimmy ever sold and purchased on there. This was gonna be a problem. I'm surprised Jimmy hadn't been using a virtual private network. His ISP wouldn't have been able to see what websites he was visiting, and the exchange wouldn't even know what his real IP address is. For example, had he used NordVPN, the sponsor of this video, Jimmy could have connected to any one of their hundreds of servers and made it look like he's from anywheres in the world. Now, I'm not sure how Nord would like me relating their product back to crime. I mean, they probably would turn Jimmy into the FBI if they came knocking, but they could have used it for a bunch of other legal stuff too. I'll give you one example. Since your ISP sees everything you do online, they'll commonly throttle the download speed of resource-intensive stuff like movies, Netflix, heck, even like downloading something from OneDrive. Switch on Nord, and all of a sudden your traffic is encrypted. Your ISP has no idea what you're doing, so they can't throttle it. I mean, they're trying to save bandwidth for other customers, but it's your darn money and time on the line. My ISP hates Steam in particular, so I stick it to them every chance I get by booting up Nord and having my downloads go at full tilt. Jimmy could have used it to save some money when traveling too. Sometimes companies want to charge you a certain price depending where they think you're from, especially car rentals and hotels. No problem, connect to a different country and boom, you're saving money. You can't put a price on privacy, but Nord does, and it's surprisingly cheap. I promise you, you don't have to be Jimmy to afford it. Right now, you can go to nordvpn.com/crumb or use my link in the description to take advantage of a huge discount with the purchase of a 2-year plan plus an extra month free. In worst case Ontario, you want to end up like Jimmy, they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's completely risk-free. Thank you, NordVPN. So, knowing the details of every time Jimmy sold Bitcoins for USD, including the addresses involved, the IRS starts combing through his transactions. They love the blockchain. Think about it, it's a public ledger of every transaction that has ever taken place. They would love this sort of thing in their traditional investigations. The only problem is linking the real identities behind these addresses. But that has been largely solved by Bitcoin tracing companies. For example, in the case of Silk Road, every address known to have belonged to them is marked as such in the tracing software. And well, as we saw in 2017 on Reddit, Jimmy's coins led right back to that fact.
Right.
If he ever sold any of them on this exchange, he was screwed. But Jimmy was smarter than that. He didn't sell any of them on this exchange. He did, however, make a very poor, unfortunate mistake. The problem with crime is that you're playing for keeps. It only takes one slip up one time to get thrown in jail forever, and on September 9th, 2019, just months after calling police, Jimmy would make that mistake. He sold 118 Bitcoins on this exchange. Coins
which was
he
like
mined
what?
himself. Coins he got
$50,000.
But there's a little quirk with Bitcoin. You can't send a partial amount. Each Bitcoin address is like a piggy bank that has to be smashed open to spend the coins inside. Spend less than the whole amount in the piggy bank, and the leftovers have to be stored in a newly created piggy bank.
That's why he had
second
multiple.
piggy bank in Bitcoin's system is called a change address. When you pay someone 6 coins from a 10 coin address, 6 coins go to their address,
Code
and your
in
change, 4 coins, is stored at a new address, which your wallet software creates for you. For Jimmy, as part of his transaction selling 118 Bitcoins, a change of approximately 0.077 Bitcoins was deposited into this address, a piggy bank that had been materialized on the spot to receive the leftover coins from the one that had just been shattered, a piggy bank which Trevor McAllen knew belonged to Jimmy. But this still did not link him to the Silk Road funds. In fact, at this point, the IRS still had no idea Jimmy even had any involvement with the Silk Road. That was all about to change. November 24th, 2020, Jimmy was reorganizing his Silk Road funds into a different configuration, splitting the 10K Bitcoin wallet into smaller amounts, 10 wallets containing 1,000 coins each. He still needed to fund that additional $32 million into his real estate development company, and it's likely he was preparing these coins for sale. 3 weeks pass, and he splits one of these 1,000 coin wallets down even further, one containing 500 coins and 2 containing 250 coins. But he makes an awful mistake. The change wallet from earlier is included in this transaction. Jimmy, at the time, may not have even realized he just combined his legitimate funds associated with an exchange that knew his real identity to his Silk Road funds, something he had diligently avoided for 8 years. And of course Trevor McAllen finds this. At first he likely just thought he found—
What did he say? If he ever got sloppy, this is where he got sloppy.
Jimmy's hidden stash, but as he clicked further and further back in the transactions, the amount of coins just kept getting bigger and bigger. 2021 now, Bitcoins had skyrocketed to $61,000 a coin. Trevor had just uncovered a $3 billion secret, and eventually, just like the Redditor, Trevor got to the end of the transactions. To his shock, the funds all originated from an address they had already flagged in their system, an address they had uncovered in 2013 when they took down Silk Road. This shock made the case a whole lot bigger. Was Jimmy some sort of drug kingpin? Maybe an unknown co-founder of Silk Road or a friend of Ross Ulbricht? To figure out those details, they were gonna have to talk to him. Less than a year after Jimboy's big mistake, law enforcement raided both his homes. Inside the lakeside mansion, stashed in a floor safe, they find $700,000 in cash and 25 Cassius coins value at 174 Bitcoin. But the real find was
those
in
are
the
physical
closet.
Bitcoin.
This Cheetos popcorn tin containing a computer holding all of Jimmy's Bitcoin. But despite arresting him and seizing his possessions, his Bitcoins were safe, encrypted, only access.
Wait, isn't this like virtual accounts? Like, so they're taking physical CPU, whatever, that's like a whole computer it looked like, and the physical Bitcoins themselves. But doesn't he still have the virtual accounts that have Bitcoin on them? Let's see if he answers.
Accessible with a private key, and Jimmy had memorized it.
Right,
and
private key.
For a while, it looked like they weren't going to get them. It took 6 months of holding him in a cage. We can see the exact moment where he breaks down on-chain. March 25th, 2020, 5 transfers are made to a government-controlled address. But what the hell were they even charging him with? His lawyers are arguing there's no real victim here. Remember, Ross had thanked him and is doing a double life sentence with no chance of parole. In fact, it would have been illegal for Jimmy to even return them.
Bro, they have given less to people who have actually like straight up commit crazy acts of violence, like double life. Bro made a website. Oh, like, what? I mean, obviously it's illegal and stuff. I mean, obviously, but I didn't think it would be like to this extent. Like, holy shit.
The coins. And
I would just assume that they would have like seized all of his assets and, you know, gave him like 5 years or something, maybe 10, 15, but like double life. It's crazy.
And looking at the case, old Uncle Sam is doing some real mental gymnastics to claim they have a right to Jimmy's coins. It's not even a case against Jimmy, it's a case against Ross. The main crux is that when Ross was sentenced in 2015, the judge ruled all 9.9 million Bitcoin that ever passed through Silk Road are directly forfeitable of his crime, regardless if he personally retained them or not. So all 9.9 million Bitcoin that ever went through Silk Road, maybe some of which you own right.
That's how it works. If like somebody takes money from a bank and then like you somehow get it, that's still stolen money. Like that's just how it works.
Now, the US government is arguing they have a right to.
Does he also get double
In
life?
total, the government got 51,680,000 Bitcoins from Jimmy,
Jeez.
value at $3.4 billion during the time of the seizure. Amazingly, after 9 years,
That's not all his
he had
Bitcoin,
only
right?
spent 1% of the coins, many of which were sold way before this historic rise. Nevertheless, because it wasn't the full amount, the government took every penny to Jimmy's name to make up for it, made him forfeit $42.7 million in legitimately obtained Bitcoin and property, even liquidated his 80% share in the real estate company. In court, he expressed shame and remorse, told the judge he always knew what he did was wrong. He said, "I think I buried my head in the sand. It made me feel important and worth something." At 33 years old, the judge sentenced him to serve 1 year and 1 day in prison for money laundering, citing, quote, the highly sophisticated
that's
nature of
valid.
the crime, and saying while the victim in this case happened to be a criminal enterprise, the victim tomorrow could be a legitimate business. Jimmy said since his arrest, his two best friends both have, quote, new jobs, and sometimes he feels like their lack of contact with him is because he's broke. Worse, he's left with a massive tax obligation from the Bitcoin liquidated
He's in
to
debt,
satisfy
bro.
forfeiture. He's sometimes wonder what's the point of life if he's going to be alone and going to be broke. Since his arrest, he's worked as a Lyft and Uber driver. This was the second largest seizure in the history of the Department of Justice. The first, well, that's a story for another day.
So this is not even the biggest lick ever? Is this the biggest? Yeah, I was just thinking that. So I'm so like a little bit of loss of words, but like they right here, like this says 9.9 million coins. It's like half the Bitcoins. I mean, I didn't know that, but who did these coins go to? Who has the money? Like, are they just sitting there now? Like, how does that work? Somebody has to be using this money. Like, I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense. I get they take it away, but like, does that go to like tax dollars or where does the money go? Anyways, good video. I'll give it a like and I'll drop it in the chat. If you guys liked it, give it a like. I think it was a good video.